Hi everyone! In this second and basically final part of our series, we will finish our 2D bridge building game, where we need to create stable bridge for the lowest price possible, and then our yellow characters will test it. If it's hold them, well, not again. We will start by preparing our physics joints to be always placed at the start and end of our bridge bars. Then we will add finally possibility to simulate our bridge. Then we will be adding option for switching our construction materials, where we can add also wooden bars to our bridge. Then we will be creating shader graph material, which can show the current load of our bridge. Also, we will add some environment for our game, and we will create our yellow bridge testing characters. And finally, we will add some budget option, so we can challenge ourselves to build the cheapest bridge possible. Also, I would like to mention you can support me on the Patreon, and you will get all the project files from my tutorials, including this one, and the link is in description. Also, if you would like to see tutorials of your favorite game mechanics, just let me know in the comments. So let's get started. Now we want to set up 2D physics for our game. So let's select our point prefab and let's add rigid body 2D component on it. Then let's open our point script. And here let's add public rigid body 2D variable with the name RBD. And now inside our start method, when the runtime is false, so this option will be only for our editor point, let's write rbd.bodyType equals to rigid body type 2D.static. So this point will be static, it will not fall down, it will be holding our bridge. Let's save it and let's go back to editor. And let's assign our rigid body 2D to our RBD variable. Now let's select our road prefab, and here we need to add rigid body 2D, then box collider 2D, and then two hinge joints 2D. One will be at the start of our bar and the second will be at the end. And let's open our bar script, and here let's create public box collider 2D variable with the name box collider, then public hinge joint 2D with the name start joint, and also public hinge joint 2D with the name end joint. Now we need to calculate a length of our box collider. So inside our update creation bar method, let's write box collider.size equals to bar sprite renderer.size. Now let's save it and let's go back to editor and let's fill our variables. So first let's fill our box collider, then our start joint and also our end joint. Now when we select our prefab and when we move our road into the editor and when we open our hinge joints, we need to change the anchor positions, which is always in a local space. So we need to find out how we can change them to be respecting the end and the beginning of our bar. So let's delete our road and let's open our bar creator script. And here inside our finish bar creation method, first we need to connect our bar joints with a point rigid body. Let's write current bar dot start joint dot connected body will equals to current start point dot RBD. Now we need to fix the anchors. So let's write current bar dot start joint dot anchor will equals to, and how we get a local space position of our position, we can do it easily by calling current bar dot transform dot inverse transform point, and we want to use the current bar dot start position, and we will get exactly the local position of it. Let's copy these two lines and let's change it to our end joint, and the last position will be basically our current endpoint dot transform dot position. Let's save the file and let's test it. And we can see we can check if it's working because the dynamic is on. So first, when we are in creation mode, we need to stop the dynamic to happen. So let's open our game manager, and inside awake method, let's write time dot time scale equals to 0. So our physics will not work. And let's create new public void method with the name play. And inside, let's change our time dot time scale to be again 1. And we want to run this method from editor. So let's add context menu with the name test gameplay. Let's save it. Let's again go back to editor. Let's press play. Let's build a bridge. Select our game manager, select our component options, and let's run the test gameplay method, and we can see the bridge is working nicely. Now let's go to our prefabs. Let's select our road and let's duplicate it, and let's change the name to be wood. So we will be creating a wooden bar. Let's change sprite of our wood to be our plank sprite, and also let's change the max length to be 5. And now we need to create an option how to switch these bars. So inside creation UI, let's create new empty game object and let's call it creation options. Inside, let's create new UI button. Let's delete the text. Let's change the transition to be none. It will be very simple button. Let's change the UI sprite again to be our road. Change the image type to be simple. And let's check the preserve aspect checkbox. And also let's add the outline component so we can see when the button will be selected. And let's change the outline to be green and change the effect distance with 3 and -3. And also let's change the Z rotation to be 45 degrees. Now let's duplicate the button. Let's move it a little bit. Let's select the sprite and let's choose the wood sprite. Change the image type to be simple. And our buttons are almost prepared. Now let's select the first button and let's change the name to be button road. And the second button will be button wood. Now let's select our creation options game object and let's add horizontal layout group. And let's check control child size width and height. Let's move it a little bit to the upper left. Also let's move the anchors. Now let's select the managers and let's create new one. And let's call it UI manager. Inside script folder, let's create new C# script. And let's call it UI manager as well. Let's open it. Clean the file. Let's create a public variable of a type button. But first let's add Unity engine.ui namespace. And the name of button will be road button. Then let's create second public button variable with the name wood button. Now let's create public void change bar method. And let's put int with the name my bar type as a parameter. And inside we want to ask if my bar type equals to 0. And we want to use the road prefab. So first we need to change the outline of the wood button. So let's write wood button.get component of a type outline.enabled will equals to false. Let's copy the line and let's change wood button to road button, and we want to enable that one to be true. Now we want a reference to our bar creator. So let's create public bar creator variable with the name bar creator. And we want to change the bar creator dot bar to instantiate variable to be the road prefab, but we need to change a little bit our bar creator first. So let's open it, and we need to add these two prefabs as variables. So let's write public game object road bar as the first one, and also public game object wood bar as a second one. So now our bar creator have access to all the prefabs. So let's go back to UI manager, and now we can easily change it with the bar creator dot road bar. Now let's duplicate it for a bar type which will equals to 1, and let's change the first outline to be true, the second outline to be false, and bar to instantiate to be wood bar. Now we want, when we start our game, to be our road bar pre-selected as a default. So let's create start method and let's write road button.onClick.invoke. It will always invoke the road button onClick method. Now let's go back to editor. First let's select our UI manager and let's drag and drop our UI manager script on it. Now first let's fill our road button, then our wood button, and also our bar creator. Now let's select our bar creator, and here we need to fill our road prefab and also our wood prefab. And now we can fill our buttons. Let's select our button road. Let's add new onClick event, and let's fill our UI manager in it. And let's fill the change bar method with a 0 as a parameter. Let's do the same for our button wood. And let's change the parameter to be 1. Now let's test it. And first we can see the road is pre-selected. And then when we change the wood, it's also working. But we can see our wood is on top our point. So let's fix it. select our point and let's change order in layer to be 1. Now this is fixed. Now we need another buttons for starting and restarting our game. So let's select our creation UI and let's create new empty game object and let's change the name to be creation buttons. And inside it, let's create new button. Let's delete the text. Let's change the transition to be none. And let's choose the source image to be our start sprite. And also let's check preserve aspect. Let's change the name of the button to be start. Let's duplicate it. Let's move it on a side. And let's rename it to be restart. Also change the source image to be the restart button. Now select back our start button and let's change the color to be more red. So the buttons are even more different. Now let's select our creation buttons game object and let's add horizontal layout group and let's check control child size, width and height and let's move it more to the side and also move the anchors. Now we need to connect our buttons with our UI manager. So let's open that one. And let's create new public void restart method and inside let's write scene manager. But first we need to add Unity engine.scene management namespace and let's continue with the dot load scene and we want load current scene which name is sample scene and from our game manager let's cut our play function and let's paste it to our UI manager and let's delete the context menu because we don't need it anymore and let's save the file and let's go back to editor here. Now let's click on our start button and let's move our UI manager to our on-click button and let's choose UI manager play function. Let's click on our restart button. Let's add new on-click event. Let's again move our UI manager on it and let's choose UI manager.restart method. And the last step, let's open our build settings and let's add our currently open scene here and we can try our game. So let's create some bridge. Press start and we can see even the restart button is working. Now let's select our road and wood prefabs and let's change the break force for both of the joints to be 300 and let's press play and let's build some simple bridge and we can see the bridge collapsed and what we want is to show the load of the bars. So let's select our materials folder and let's create new material and let's call it bar material. And also let's create new unlit graph shader and let's call it show load and let's select our bar material and let's connect our show load shader on it. Now let's select our two prefabs and let's add our bar material on them. Let's go back to material folder and let's open the show load shader. Let's maximize it. First on Blackboard, let's create a texture 2D property with the reference name underscore main text. Let's drag and drop it to our shader graph. Let's create sample texture 2D node. Let's connect it. Now we need color node with a red color and we want to blend these two colors with the lerp node by a new vector1 value which will be representing the load. So let's connect them to the T slot and let's make a property from it. And let's rename it to the load and let's also change the reference to be underscore load. Now let's connect our lerp output with our color and let's connect our alpha output with alpha and let's change the master options to be a transparent shader and let's save it. Now let's open our bar script and let's create new public void update material method. But first let's define new variable which will be float start joint current load which will equal to 0. Then let's create float end joint current load variable which will also equals to 0. And now inside our update material method let's calculate our start joint current load and we will calculate it by dividing our start joint dot reaction force dot magnitude by our start joint dot break force. And then now the current load value will be between 0 and 1. But we want to calculate it only if our joint exists, because when joint break, the joint component will be removed. So let's add if statement in front of it, where we are asking if our start joint doesn't equal to null. Now let's copy the line and let's do the same for our end joint. Now from these two current loads, we need the maximum one. So let's create float max load, which will equals, and we want maximum number from these two variables. And we can do it easily with the matf.max. And let's use start joint current load and also end joint current load, the second parameter. So now we have one value and we want to show it inside our material, but we can't change material property directly because the color would change on all the bars. But we can use material property block, which will change the color of the material individually. So first we need to create new material property block variable with the name prop block. And first let's assign prop block to be equals new material property block. Then we want to fill it. So let's write parsprite renderer.get property block, and let's use our prop block as a parameter. Now we need to change the value which we was defining in a shader with the underscore load. So let's write prop block dot set float, and let's put string underscore load as a first parameter and our max load value as a second. Now we want to use our prop block into our material, so let's write bar sprite renderer dot set property block, and let's use prop block as a parameter. Now we need to create an update method where we will be updating this material. And let's do it only when we are calculating the physics of the bridge. So let's write if time.timescale equals to 1. We want to update our material. Now let's save it and let's test it. Let's create some bridge. Let's press start and we can see the load of the bars when they break. Now let's create a new game object and let's call it environment, because we want to make our game a little nicer. And let's create 2D object and sprite shape. Now we see the sprite shape is super ugly. So from a Windows, let's open our package manager and let's select the sprite shape package and let's import the sprite shape samples so we can work with something. Now let's select our sprite shape controller and let's add the grass and rock profile, and also let's change the name of our sprite shape to be cliff. Now let's edit the spline and let's move all the points to the right side and let's adjust them a little bit. And also let's add edge collider 2D to it and let's change the edge radius to be 0.5. Now let's duplicate the cliff and let's move it to the right side. Now we also want to create some testing game objects which we will be testing our bridge. So let's create a new one and let's call it bridge testers. And from the sprites, let's drag and drop our bird enemy idle sprites. Let's rename it to tester and let's move it under our bridge testers. Let's move it a little bit on our left side. Let's flip the X value and let's also add the circle collider to it. And also let's add the rigidbody 2D component on it and let's make it more heavy. So let's change the mass value to be 10. And the last thing, let's add the constants force 2D component and let's change force X value to be 1. Now our tester will automatically go to the right side. Now let's test it. So press play. Let's create some bridge and press start. And we can see first the bridge is really unstable and also our testers can go through it. So let's fix it. And what we need is to change collisions between our rigid bodies layers. So first let's select our wood prefab. Let's click on add new layer and we need to create 4 layers. First will be road, second will be supports, third will be environment, and the last one will be testers. Now let's select our wood prefab, let's change the layer to be support, select our road prefab, change layer to be road, select our bot cliffs, game objects, and let's change the layer to be environment, and also let's select our tester game object, and let's change the layers to be testers. Now let's open the project settings, and let's select the physics 2D tab, and first we need to deselect all the collision metrics, layers, and we only want the interaction between the testers and the testers itself, then between testers and environment and testers and road. Now we can close the project settings and we can test it. Let's build the same bridge. And let's press start. Now we can see this is working and the bars falling down. Now we will be creating a budget for our bridge creation. So select our creation UI. Let's create a slider and let's move it roughly inside the upper middle side of our screen. Let's expand the hierarchy and let's delete the handle. Let's zoom to our fill area and let's move it a little bit till the edges. Let's open it and let's select the fill game object and let's change the width to be 0. Now let's try our slider. It is working nicely. Select again our fill value and let's change the color to be green. Now let's select our background game object and we want to add the outline component. And let's change first the color to be white with the full alpha. And let's change the effect distance to be 5 in X and -5 with the Y. Now let's select the background again and let's create a new text component under it. But we don't see the text because it's behind the background, so we need to fix it. Let's add a canvas component on it and let's press the override sorting and let's change the value to 1. Now let's make the text component stretchable. Let's center it to the middle and let's check also the best fit and let's also change the font style to be bold and change the text to be $1,000. Now let's open our UI Manager script and here we need to create a new public slider variable with the name budget slider. Then we need to create public text variable with the name budget text, and also we need a public variable with the type gradient and with the name my gradient, so we can adjust the colors of our slider. Now we need to create a new public void method called update budget UI, and let's put float current budget as a first parameter and float level budget as a second. Inside let's write budget text.text equals to current budget.toString plus, and we need to add a $sign, but this can be float number, so we want to round it to the int. Then we need a value for our slider between 0 and 1, so let's write budget slider.value will equals our current budget divide level budget, and then we want to change the color, so let's write budget slider.fillRect.get component of a type image.color, which will equals to my gradient.evaluate, and let's put our budget slider.value as a parameter. Now let's switch to our game manager, and here we need to add public float level budget variable with a default value of 1000. And later we can increase it inside inspector as we need. Then we want public float variable with the name current budget with a default value of 0. Then we want reference to our UI manager, so let's write public UI manager my UI manager. And now inside our awake method, first we want to update the UI of our slider text. So first let's write current budget equals to level budget, and then my UI manager dot update UI budget, and let's put current budget as a first parameter and level budget as a second. Then we need to create two more methods. First one will check if we have enough money to buy new bridge bars. So let's create public bool method with the name canPlaceItem, and let's put float item cost as a parameter. And the second method will actually update the budget. So let's write public void update budget method, and let's put float item cost as a parameter. Now to decide if we can buy our item, we need to ask if item cost is more than our current budget, and if yes, we can't buy it, so let's return false. And on the other hand, let's create else branch which will return true. Now to update budget, we want to write current budget minus equals to item cost, and also here we want to update our UI. So let's copy and paste the line from our awake method. Now let's open our bar script. Here we need to create public flow variable with the name cost, and the default value will be 1. And this will be cost per 1 unit of length. And also we need to create public float variable with the name actual cost, which will be representing the final cost of current length of the bar. Now to calculate actual cost, we will calculate it inside our update creation bar method, and it will equals the length times cost. Now the last thing, let's go to our bar creator. And here we will be buying the bars when we place them, if we have enough money. First we need reference to our game manager. So let's create public game manager with the name my game manager. And here inside the onPointer down method, before calling finish bar creation, we need to ask if we have money to buy this item. So let's write if my game manager dot can place item, and let's put current bar dot actual cost as a parameter. And we are asking if the result is true, and if yes, we can basically finish the bar creation. And if we can buy the item, let's go to our finish bar creation, and here let's create my game manager dot update budget, and let's put current bar dot actual cost as a parameter. Let's save the file, and let's go back to editor. Let's select our road prefab, and let's change the cost to be 40. Let's select our wood prefab, and let's change the cost to be 30. Now let's select our creation UI game object, and let's fill our game manager. Then let's select our UI manager, and let's fill our slider and also our text value. And also let's open our gradient. Let's move the color slider to 10. Let's change color to red. Let's add new slider and let's move it to 30. Let's change color to orange. And also let's change color of the last slider to be green. And let's change the mode to be fixed. Now the gradient is ready. Now let's select our game manager and let's drag and drop our UI manager to the variable, and we are ready to test it. So let's press play and let's build some useful bridge for the money. And we can see while we are building, the budget is automatically decreasing. And now when we press start button, we can see this bridge will hold our tester object. So we made it. And with this setup, I also made this level where I just changed camera size so we have more room to play. And I also updated the UI, and that's basically everything. I hope you like this series, and if you would like to see some specific game mechanic, just let me know in a comment. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.